welcome. Our guest today is a bit of a celebrity. The motion designer role. I'm sure most of you know who he is, but for the our guest today is Matt Voyce, a motion and graphic designer, who also likes to be called your friendly neighborhood type designer. Matt is known for his colorful and illustrative animations, which have allowed him to work with clients such as Nike, Google, the Financial Times, and Pepsi. His work instantly stands out and brings to Type Alive and giving it a playful personality. His collaborations with other designers such as Rafael Serra have been nothing short of incredible. Matt, welcome. We're really lucky to have you here. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for that very nice introduction. Really nice to be here.
Yeah, cool. How are the holidays, by the way? Obviously, we just had a Christmas break. How's the first one with the baby?
Yeah, it was good. Intense. And this was like the first year ever that we did it in our own house. So it was good. I really, really enjoyed it. I felt a bit more chilled out, which was nice because sometimes it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit stressful, but it was good. It was nice. Yeah, good fun.
Sweet. Guys, get up to anything else over the break, or did you go away, or just?
No, just took it easy this year.
And you guys saw a lot of snow up there as well. How was all the snow?
Yeah, it's been off and on, and it snowed really heavily here a few weeks ago, and there's still big like bundles of ice up in the north of the town where I live. So yeah, it was nice to have snow because I'm a big snow fan. It makes me, I don't know, it just feels very peaceful when you're out walking in it, and it just, just very calming.
The snow just crunching around. Have you always kind of lived around there in the Midlands, or?
So no, I live in Leeds now, up in Yorkshire, and yeah, originally I'm from Leicestershire and a place called Loughborough, but I moved to Leeds for work after university and just never left.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah, sweet. Must have really fallen in love with the town during uni.
Yeah. Funny enough, I went to Sheffield Hallam, but my partner, my wife now, she went to Leeds Uni, so I was going to Leeds every weekend and kind of was seeing the city and exploring it, and then yeah, she got a full-time job here after university, and where I was from, there wasn't many sort of design-based jobs, so I came up north, and yeah, I never regret it.
Have you ever kind of had the desire to move to London? I know a lot of motion designers who aren't based in London originally just always feel like it's somewhere they need to come and to get some work under their belt.
Yeah, when I left university, I was having interviews in London for jobs. They were very random jobs. They were some were like UI-based jobs, doing like user interface design. Some were working in-house for design teams for very random companies. So I did have a few interviews, but I never actually got anything. So for me, it worked out well. I would have now, like I'm past it and I'm in like my early 30s, I would have liked to have experienced London and just sort of experience living there for a while and just see what it was like. But I never got the chance. No.
It's just overhyped. Don't worry, you're not missing out on much. I don't find. Yeah. So I just thought you could give us a quick intro into how did your journey in kind of the creative industry begin? What were your original kind of like inspirations? Did you start off like drawing or painting as a kid? Like what really kind of like sparked off your kind of creative interest?
So yeah, as a kid, I was always good at like the creative side. I watched a lot of Simpsons and Futurama growing up, so I used to kind of practice drawing comic strips when I was like really young, and throughout school, design and like sort of art subjects were always like my strongest. Like math, science, English I was pretty bad at, especially like science, but when it came to like the creative stuff, I sort of excelled. So like when it came to doing my like A levels, I was doing biology, psychology, and art, and I think it was product design. And in product design and art, I was doing really well, but in biology and psychology, I got like E's and D's. And I tried to drop 2 subjects, but I couldn't. So I then went to an art college, basically, and that's where I kind of started to really hone in on just doing pure art and design, which was nice. And then yeah, like I always kind of like making my own stuff in my own time. Even when I was in sort of design roles, I kind of just liked spending time outside of work just making stuff. So I knew creatively that's kind of where I wanted to go, and I wanted to do creative and sort of art and design in some form. So it was always like that. Really, I had that strong sort of backbone. So I knew it was going to be something that I just didn't know what it was going to be. I had no idea in what form or how it would kind of like take shape, really.
Yeah. No, that's cool. The biology and psychology, where did that kind of come into it? What were you kind of like thinking was your train of thought back then?
At one point, I wanted to be like a physiotherapist. But I was kind of split and like very much drawn towards the art and design side, and I knew that was like they were my safer options because I knew I could just do those naturally, and it felt very organic. I had to choose some other subjects that could maybe lead me down a different path, but yeah, they didn't work out whatsoever, and I just couldn't get the grasp of them. I was always very visual and better doing like the visual kind of stuff, and like trying to revise for my A levels just didn't work. I couldn't get like the grasp of it. Whereas making stuff and doing visual stuff, it just flowed. It just felt very like natural. So yeah, that's kind of where that kind of split happened and the divide happened.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I understand. Very kind of like similar experiences in my case as well. Yeah. You mentioned in some other interviews that I've actually read about you that you won a cover for the Simpsons comic books. What was that exactly like? Could you just explain a bit more about that? How old were you when you were doing this at the time as well?
Uh, I 12 or 13.
Sweet.
Um, yeah, I've literally got it behind me.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
it.
when I was very young, I was like I said, I was very much into the Simpsons, Futurama, and I used to collect Futurama comics. Obviously, got it here. So this is from July 2005, and every month these comics and even the Simpsons comics, they ran competitions for kids basically to enter and just make a piece of fan art. And I decided to do like a fake crossover cover between Futurama and the Simpsons. So every month you're talking like kind of like this kind of stuff. So like kids would like write in and
Mm.
sort of put stuff in. It might be reversed, but I went for like a comic cover, and here it is, 2005, young Matthew
Oh, wow.
Voice.
Brilliant.
Um, yeah, and this isn't staged, none of this, because I just happen to have it in my drawer. But I won a robot, like a tin toy, and it's literally here. I still have it as part of my setup. Like this is like
Oh,
20 years
brilliant.
old now. Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
incredible.
It just worked, and I like I said, I used to like making comic covers and like fake comic strips. Then I entered this, and it was just like it was more like fuel to the fire. They're like, oh my god, something could work here. Like I like
Yeah.
designing.
For sure, definitely. Were you doing a lot of that stuff, like just entering competitions or just like, kind of like drawing competitions back then?
I wasn't entering any competitions really, apart from that.
Yeah,
I just came across it one day,
yeah.
uh, and it was just fate in a way. Just happened to work.
Nice. The original Matt Voice just being published in Simpsons and Futurama. Quite cool.
Mm.
Yeah. If they approached you now to just do, I guess, like an intro, well, maybe not Futurama, but Simpsons, I guess now, would you probably jump at the chance, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd love to. I grew up with those TV shows, and
Yeah.
um, there's episodes where I can, you watch an old TV show, and there's a quote coming up. Like there's just certain episodes that I still remember now, and I could just quote them, and I just
Mm.
know what's coming up. It's like ingrained in my brain.
Yeah. Did you watch a lot of the like early 90s shows? That's what I've been reading about you anyway. Yeah, in the early 90s, Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja
Yeah,
Turtles, that kind of stuff.
God, yeah, it was all over that kind of stuff. I used to watch more films than like cartoons or like animated films, like
Mm.
Page Master. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
And yeah, like the early Jumanji films, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like those kind of films I grew up with. So I used to watch those over and over and over.
Mm.
Yeah, it's good. Good
Yeah,
times.
you can definitely see how that kind of those kinds of early films feed and kind of influence your style quite a bit. It's really really kind of cool to see. How long have you actually been in the motion design industry now, would you say?
Um, this is my 5th year, really.
Okay.
Um, I did a little bit of uni.
Yeah.
I hated it. Did
Yeah.
not like it at all. I did one module on it where we had to make a 15-second animation to a
Mm.
soundtrack. So just given this open piece of music, and we had to visually create something to it. And I chose to do like these leaves animating along like a scenic path and like loads of like color and airbrushing, and it was all designed in Photoshop and animated in After Effects. And I hated it. I made this animation, and I was so disappointed by what I'd made. I vowed to never do motion again.
Wow.
And then when I got my first design job, I worked with a videographer who worked for this kind of college to just make this really basic college-based animation. So that when I then moved to an actual full-on design agency, I mentioned in my CV I knew some basic After Effects. So that kind of then got brought into my role slowly. And as I moved from agency to agency, I started to get more time on sort of After Effects and with animations. Excuse me. And then, yeah, the last place I worked, they really threw me into the deep end, trying to get me to do more motion work. And then I would just go home and then apply that to my own work. And then it's only when I started to think about animating type and making type move that I started to sort of slowly get those design briefs and started to move into the design industry. Um,
Mm.
yeah, very unexpected. I never in a million years thought I would be in motion or animation, but
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah. Because you started off as, I guess, graphic and illustration, right? Now you're a fully fledged motion designer or
Yeah,
VAGs.
yeah, yeah. I had those. I was trained to be like more illustrative in my design sort of workflow. And the last place I worked for, a place called Analog in Leeds, a lot of their work is very illustration based and it's very illustration heavy. So I was good at illustrating, and I could really sort of lend my hand to different styles and just design well in a way. I was sat next to like some of these amazing designers, like senior designers, design directors, and they sort of helped me hone in my skills so that when it came to motion, I then was able to bring that into animation and moving image. So it was kind of like a nice sort of progression, because there's not always that many motion designers who can design and illustrate or have
Mm.
that sort of in their wheelhouse. So I kind of had both sides of it, and that helped me then think about how I was going to design something for it to be animated. So even if I was creating something that wasn't going to be animated, I would just have emotion in mind, and it was kind of like it was just there. It was quite a nice way to sort of, I don't know, for it to work for me.
You mentioned that you vowed never to do motion again after that kind of like university module. But I think it's obviously worked out really, really well for you. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
have
really
there been
weird.
any other like moments in your career where you just kind of essentially thought, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm not going to go down this route, and you just kind of not really thought about it. But now that you're, I guess, been doing it for so long now, you kind of just opened up to the idea of working in those kinds of ways again.
Yeah, like when I did first start out, and when I was still working full time for Analog, and that's when I was kind of starting to release my own type animations on Instagram, and because they were all moving, I was getting those commissions, like I was getting those briefs through that were like, can you do this and animate this, and there was times where I was tackling these kind of briefs, and I was getting them through to email, and they were like scary. Like I was terrified to like even think about how I was going to make the idea in this brief like actually work or animate. So there's points where I was juggling like these animated briefs whilst also working my full-time job, and that was very scary because I felt the pressure, I felt the stress, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, like she could feel it. She could see the stress and the pressure was there. And yeah, there was times where I was like, I can't do this. Like I can't juggle these things. I can't juggle doing animation with doing my day job. And yeah, little did I know that like soon it would just be every single thing I would do would be animated. And now like I don't even think twice about making something and not making it move. Even when I rarely get briefs that have illustrations in mind and don't need to be animated, I already know that if I'm going to post these out on my Instagram or on my website, I'm going to make like an animated promo to show them off. Like I'm going to make them move. So yeah, the mindset's completely switched. Like I wouldn't think twice now about animating everything. Whereas before it was like, if I really have to animate something, then I'll do it as part of the job. So yeah, it's kind of like completely switched the mindset, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
great, I guess.
No, definitely. How would you say you kind of got to that stage where you were able to switch your mindset? Because yeah, going from a place where things are quite scary to then being like, oh, this is comfortable. It's a huge achievement.
Yeah, to practice and time and experience in the industry. Like, and when I say the industry, I mean like the world of freelance and sitting in this room and just taking on briefs day to day. That's the industry to me. Um, that just the pure practice of doing it over and over for different clients and different brands, and no two briefs are the same. They might have similarities, but every single job is different. So after like a year or two, like things start to feel much more natural, and you don't feel the pressure as much. Like I do still get briefs now where I open them, I'm like, oh my god, that is how the hell am I going to do that? So it never stops, but if the pressure feels less, and having all the experience from all these jobs and these briefs over the last few years, just it makes it a lot easier. The pressure just feel like it's off. But then sometimes, like I said, I do get this odd brief where it's like, oh, it's scary, but
Yeah.
somehow managed to make my way through it and make this cool work at the end. And it is worth it, because then you make something that you never thought you could make, and it's like, oh my god, I actually made that. Yeah, it's like a personal achievement every time that happens.
No, that's cool. That's really, really good. That's great. Great to hear. Yeah. I guess since we're on the same kind of topic, I guess with imposter syndrome, do you feel like you ever get it, or do you just like at that stage now in your career where you're just like, oh no, I'm pretty comfortable. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm about. You definitely, obviously, know your own style, so it'd be good to kind of hear your stories with any kind of imposter syndrome.
Uh, I do still get it at times. The main times I seem to get it is I've been fortunate enough to talk at like some design conferences. So like up on a stage talking just about me, which always sounds very weird. Um, I do still get it then. Like I still sometimes get like, I'm just me. I'm just Matt Voice. I'm nothing special. I'm just a designer. I'm just an animator. So it still comes in that sense. Like I still don't always understand like how my work is different or more special than someone else's, or is more powerful. I don't know what it is. But I realize that the kind of journey that I've taken and the journey that I've had from going from not doing any animation and essentially making my own niche, that's kind of where that sort of impact and that attraction lies, I guess, especially for like younger designers. So I kind of get brought back down to earth there when I remember what it was like when I was in their position and I was essentially trying to find my feet and decide what the hell I wanted to do in this mammoth of an industry. So yeah, it just still come in, and then I guess even when I get these design briefs that are very challenging and seem almost beyond me, although I feel like I can almost take on anything now, like I can take on any brief that comes into my inbox, I do still get briefs, and it's like, like I just said a minute ago, like although I feel like I'm more than competent to make what I'm being asked to make, the thought of making it is almost like I get those butterflies, still get those butterflies. Like I did
Yeah.
a job recently for Olipop. It's an American sort of probiotic soda. And I was working with an agency who are then working with this brand. And this brief had like 3 parts. 2 parts were animated type, sorry. So easy. Straight off the bat, it's like, I'm more than confident I can deliver those bits easy. But then the middle part of that brief was essentially to create, the top line idea was to create an illustrated can. So this branded can traveling along a rainbow with like fruits and bubbles and sparkles and clouds and creating this whole world around this can taking this journey. And I saw this in the brief, and the first thing I said to these guys was like, brief looks great, but just a heads up, like that middle section, the actual hero can traveling around a rainbow might be tricky. It's not something I've done before. Like I can do type and I can do motion graphics, and this is kind of where sometimes the problem lies with what I do, which I'll come to in a second. But I said to them, like, it's going to be hard. I think I can make it work, but you're just going to have to just leave it with me. And they said they're there to help me, and if I need like visuals of a can spinning in a 3D form to implement into my design, and that's fine. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Not even thinking about how the hell that would work. Like, and so I jumped into this job, did the animated type bits, easy peasy, and then illustrated this absolutely fantastic scene of like a rainbow and a can and clouds and sparkles and bubbles and shines, and thinking, even though I knew like this is far fetched, like what I'm illustrating here, that there's that like inner child, not inner child, but that inner voice being like, you can do this, like you know your way around After Effects, you can make it work, even if it's going to be a bit like rudimental, a bit naive, like it should work with the theme of the campaign. So I had that working for me. And then, like the sort of design got signed off to a degree, and the day came when it was for me to animate it. And although it was hard, and I was kind of like learning bits on the go, like it worked out really well. There's no other way to sort of like resolve on that. Like the file animation is one of the best. It's one of the best 12-second pieces of animation I've ever done.
Wow.
It really is. Like I look at it now and I can't believe that I animated that. Even though I know how I did it, I know like the little intricacies that I could put in, like the little things that people on the day-to-day may not notice. I made that, and it's like, that's like a massive confidence boost. And it's just more fuel to the fire that like type in motion is changing. Like it might not always be around in the form that I do it, but like I learned a lot from doing that job. So, I'm going to keep taking those skills and push them forward to my next brief. And kind of what I was going to like halfway through that sort of that chat there was that like people come to me sometimes with briefs, and there's a fine line between like animated type and just motion graphics. There's a lot of motion design out there, like a lot of talented people that can do like amazing motion graphic. And I never saw myself as a motion graphic artist or motion designer. I was just type artist. I was like a type animator. But obviously that is motion graphics. And there are like the sort of borders do blend there sometimes. Like I get briefs and there's a bit of type, but then in reality, it is just a motion graphics brief. So I've been trying to sort of navigate that world as well, and work out how I fit into that world of motion design, because I never thought I would offer motion design as like a service, as it were. But in reality, everything I do is motion design. So when I do get briefs and they're not very type based, I do say to people like, I'm a type animator. That's my strong suit. I have motion graphic skills in my like wheelhouse, but it's not my number one sort of skill set. Type in motion is my skill set. But then doing jobs like this Olipop job where I had to do this rainbow, like it has just shown me that like I can tackle these other areas and accept these other briefs that aren't something that I'd normally accept. Because if it brings out results like what I've made for those guys, like I mean, it'd be astronomical. The possibilities are essentially endless, which is cool.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's been a bit of a learning curve, and that was only the last 3 months that I did that Honeypop job. But it just took. I felt like it took me from being like a I can do some motion graphics to being like, oh my god, like I can actually make like these full-on scenes if I put my mind to it. Um, yeah, hell of a short journey that in a couple of weeks.
no, definitely. That sounds incredible, man. Like, yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, I don't know if you posted it on Instagram or anything, but yeah, I'd love to see it. It's out.
It's going to be on Instagram in a month or so, but it's on my website now, and it's
Sweet.
like right there, and it's
Yeah,
in its place of honor. But yeah, I'm so chuffed with that.
brilliant, man. That's so good to hear. It's so great when I like, you can hear like the passion coming out in your voice about what you're creating and what you're doing. Um, yeah, it's just incredible. Speaking of website, I've obviously seen you got a new website. How's that going? How's that been for you? How's that project?
Good. Yeah, I knew how much went into like a website build, but I didn't realize how much went into a website build at the same time. Um, and I was lucky enough to meet a guy called Ollie when I did a talk in Brisbane last year in Australia, and he runs a web design agency called Uncommon, based out of Australia, and he offered to make this site for me, not for free, but like he offered to be like he said like we could build you a site like that you're proud of. Um, and the beauty of it was that like I could design elements to go on the site, like animated menu titles or like animated 404 pages, like everything that they could normally do for like a website build. I could then be sort of linked into that kind of like initial build and design stage of putting my style into the very aspects that people take for granted for day to day, like a hamburger menu that comes up with like work, contact, or about me. So that was a long time coming, because I've used like Squarespace years ago, and then I used Adobe Portfolio just as part of my
Mm,
Creative Cloud subscription. That was my last website. So to have like an actual website that's got like a CMS behind it, and it's got like a full on build, yeah, it's amazing, and it's very. I never thought I would have it. I never thought it would sort of happen, but I learned a lot from seeing how these guys build the website and the common bugs and issues that arise when they're doing it. So yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve, but really good to kind of see how it happens from the ground, from like the sort of ground floor up, from like the initial design stage through to the launch, and then how some of these sites work in the back end, like with the CMS, like the content management system, like uploading my design pieces to then be pushed to the website. Like, yeah, very insightful, and I will never take it for granted, like how hard it is to build a website.
yeah, for sure. I can imagine it's just a mammoth task. But yeah, they've done an incredible job. Like your website definitely has your unique stamp on it, man. You can definitely tell. And it is just incredible. It's really cool to see all your work there as well. Definitely.
Yeah, they did great. Really, really grateful to them.
I guess going back to kind of like just the last job and like, kind of how you're feeling, is it a case of, when you get given a brief, it's always like, yeah, I'm going to say yes. I'm just always going to say yes to a brief and then I'll figure it out. Do you go through that process or that journey? Is that kind of like your ethos, or is it just, you were just like, oh, I need the work kind of thing. I'll get to this.
Yeah,
Out.
it's definitely become a bit more of the ethos, um, because the whole industry is like the last few months and the last half year for some motion designers I know was very tricky. Like the work just dried up. Um, things have been changing a lot in the industry, and work has been a bit more tighter. And even my field is getting a bit more competitive now. Like people are starting to not necessarily like people are starting to just focus on type in motion. Like they're starting to be type animator artists. But agencies and teams are learning more about how type moves, and they're doing it for themselves now in house. So, you know, um, work's been thinning out a little bit. So whilst I went through a stage of like, I don't know, for the last 2.5 years of being like, especially before I had a child, like I'll take on every brief, like, and I did. Sometimes I was like, I was struggling literally like 6 or 7 jobs within like a 3-4 week period. Some were based on day rates, so I was doing like 1 job a day and then working in the evening on project fee jobs. So like I went through, and that was kind of like I guess kind of like a window into how like I grew so much so quickly sometimes, because I was just taking on so much work that like I could almost like not breathe sometimes, because like I was doing one thing and then getting amends for another thing. So like I was literally just like juggling. And then yeah, like it kind of got to like the point where like, although like I've done a lot of work now and I've done a lot of briefs for a lot of people, I now have experienced different sides of what it is that people think that I offer and what I actually do offer. So not that I can be more picky, but like I do want to be more picky. I want to now just select work that I really want to work on, work that I'm going to be proud of, and not be forced down the route of like, I have to take on this job because money's tight, or like, you know, I really do need the money. And sometimes it will come to that, and it has come to that. But I don't know. It depends purely on the job as well, and how I feel about like the brief, and if it's something that I feel like I can really sort of bring like a positive standpoint to, and like a unique point of view to. Yeah, it's going to vary from job to job, but like I really want to just now take on work that I really think that I can add to, and take on briefs that really appeal to me, rather than just taking on any old job. And places like Instagram are a good point for finding work to avoid, basically. I've been chatting to an artist called Farron recently, who I've collaborated for in the past on this Deadpool piece. And I was speaking to him recently because, you know, like he gets a lot of DMs and I get a lot of DMs sometimes, and it's people asking for commissions. And those are the kind of jobs to kind of like avoid completely. They're almost like red flags, because people who just say like, are you open for commissions? Like for me personally, like I found this, they don't either appreciate like the timeline of a project, like how long things take, or they completely disregard how, you know, how much time and effort goes into these pieces. So when it comes to like budgeting and the fee for jobs, like you say your fee or how much you think it's going to be, and then you just get ghosted, or they might take the job on and they never pay, which I've had at the very start of my career.
Oh.
So there's certain like keywords and certain language that come in from briefs that are like kind of like, no, like there's dating red flag, like ping, ping, ping. It's like there's a red flag, and it's like I'm just going to allow essentially shut the conversation down. Or sometimes like you'll say like how much you might charge for a project and how long it might take, and then that's enough to put people off sometimes. And that's normally, you know, like a single job, and they may not appreciate it. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a balancing act in a way, and kind of like testing the water with different people and learning. You only learn this from taking on those jobs. You really do. Like you can't just say no to everything straight away because if someone says something a certain way. Like, you know, you take those jobs on, and there might be a good job, there might be a bad job, but you have to just take them on and learn from experience, and be stronger and get stronger from each job or each negative experience you might have. Because it is good to fail, and it is good for some things to fall through. Because you need that experience to learn and to grow as a designer and as like an independent or freelance designer.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, failing is really valuable. Is like so valuable. Like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, you learn so much. Like, yeah, I've learned tons along the way of my career, my short career. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good lessons
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think loads of people are quite scared of failing and doing the wrong thing, and it's just you can always learn and you can always develop. It's good, but yeah, man. Yeah, as you're saying, like it has been quite a tough year this year for around. Like, are you more hopeful this year? Are you a bit more optimistic about what's to come? Are you just like still just doing your thing?
Yeah, still just do my thing, and I am still
Mm.
hopeful and confident that, you know, things will continue to go as well as they have done the last 4 years now. And just take each week and each month as it comes, because like I'm never, no week is the same for me unless I'm on like a really heavy long booking, which is rare. Um, you know, it's always different. So yeah, just go, just be easy. I think is that's been my sort of thought process in the past. Just go with the flow and don't put too much stress and pressure on when work's coming in and what briefs are coming in. Just just be open to it and just try and relax into it and not stress too much. But we'll have to see. Like each year has some quiet periods, some busy periods. So we'll see. We're still early on. Like January is normally relatively quiet for me. It's on and off. So that's currently aligned with the last few years. So yeah, we'll see. But it should pick up. I hope. We'll see. And if it doesn't, then I will just keep making personal pieces and trying to attract those jobs. That's always been a driving force for me. Making these pieces, like making work I want to be paid for. That's how I got started in the first place. Was making animated type for the hopes of being hired to make it for a real brief. And I've never stopped doing that. Even when I've been busy, I've pushed and forced personal projects into my day to day, and I still, make things to this day and release things every 3 days. So that's my fallback plan, is to essentially making fake briefs. Like what if like I'm doing one at the minute, which I'm going to post out tonight. Like what if like the team, it's the classic, like people want to work for Nike, but what if Nike hired me to make an Air Max post, because I've got a pair of Air Max trainers I destroyed recently, unfortunately, on like a muddy adventure. And I've made a post just to just honor those shoes, and I put that out there. And I loved making it. I've enjoyed making this piece, and if it brings in work, that's amazing. That's a massive bonus. But I've not just made it to just try and get new work, but I always find that has helped in the past. And people don't know what you're capable of unless you show them and share these pieces of like work online or all these social channels. So I'm going to fall back on that for now, and we'll see how the year goes.
I think some sort of connection to your personal work. That's a good little insight. I think. Always good to try and have that rather than just making something for the sake of making it.
Definitely.
You got a new little one on who's been here for a couple of months now. How have you found navigating parenthood and creative industry, and finding time for your own personal stuff as well as like managing your time generally? Because having a baby is hard. It consumes a lot of time.
Yeah. It's surprisingly life changing.
Yeah,
as you know, and I never thought it was going to be easy. Like I always knew it was going to be hard. Like I knew what I was signing up for when we thought about having a child. My concern was always time. Like even when we were in the early stages of pregnancy, my main stress was like when he or she arrives, like how what's my day-to-day going to look like? Because I've gone like 3-4 years of just having a completely open schedule, like all the time in the world, like no real commitments, or not even commitments, but like things to look after. Like I have a dog. That's been the only thing that's kind of like, I don't know, been something that I've have to think about or plan ahead for. So my concern was always like time. Like how am I going to have time for, not even always just for like, client projects, but like for the personal projects that I like to make, and like the personal pieces, because I love making those and I always have, and they've been a massive part of my journey up to now. And I don't want to just cut those out. And, the evenings now I'm much more tired and I am much more enjoying the time away from the screen. So this year, like I've tried to, like Freddie now is 10 months old almost. So now instead of just bashing out design posts or like personal projects that I've liked making, but don't really have any real like meaning, I'm I'm now trying to basically spend more time making individual pieces like this Nike Air Max piece I've just mentioned, which has taken like a few days, and just do things slowly, bit by bit, until I've made something that isn't just like a quick Instagram post. It's not just something that I'm just going to try and shove out there because I don't want people to forget about me, that kind of thought process. Or like, you don't want to just like, I went through a really bad period of like maybe early last year of making pieces for Instagram, not making pieces for myself, not making pieces to try and draw in work, making pieces because I wanted to stay on people's radars. Like there was a one or two other type artists who were sort of starting to sort of, become a bit more well known, and their styles, I felt defensively, were taken from my personal work. And it was a lot of their stuff was inspired from my work. So I started, it was almost like I was like competing with myself because they didn't have a clue that I was feeling not negative, like I was feeling threatened. They were just making stuff because that's how I started out. But I went with my process and kind of mindset of being like, oh man, they just post out another piece. Like I'm gonna make another piece now, just to just to try and top that. And that was really unhealthy and really a horrible mindset to be in. I've gone down a bit of a tangent here, but
No, all good.
that thought process of making personal pieces for that reason was really detrimental to like my mental health. And since having Freddie, I've had to slow down. So it's meant like I've not physically and mentally had time to then make stuff all the time, and to even look at these other profiles. Like the most healthiest thing that I did was I muted people on Instagram, and I didn't want to necessarily unfollow people, because sometimes like some of these people, like they were inspired to start doing what they're doing because of me, which is amazing. It's a beautiful sort of thought. But when you start to feel like threatened because your livelihood's threatened, or like people could be starting to take briefs from you, which was the core reason and the core issue of that. Like I thought, if I mute people, and the way Instagram's algorithm works now, if you stop interacting with people's profiles, like you stop viewing their posts, stop searching for their name in the explore feed, and they're going to drop off your radar. And that really helped me stop thinking about others' work and stop trying to just make stuff for Instagram, just because I was worried people were going to think like, oh, I'm like second best, when I just wanted to be the best version of me doing what I do. So now this year, essentially because time is short and I just want to I don't want to sit there and like, we have all day to like essentially be with and without Freddie. Like he's still young before I go to the nursery. And because I work from home, I get more time with him in the daytime. I can go downstairs, I can see him with my wife. So now, because my time with my partner Francesca is now reduced to being with Freddie, like in the daytime and like even like early evening. Now the evening time I do have, I want to be with her. I don't want to be sat on my lap in front of the TV on the computer, which I was for years. Like, and she was amazing throughout that time before Freddie. Like she was always really, she was like my number one fan. She was always really passionate and really fine with me sitting there in the evenings whilst we were watching TV or Netflix series. I would be making a design piece. I was just making a personal piece. And she was fine with that because she knew the end goal was to essentially be what I am at the minute. So she was great. And now since like Freddie's come along and time's changed, like, I want to spend more time with family and with her. And what I'm trying to say is like, because of that time and because time is short, whatever pieces that now that I'm making for like just personal pieces, they have more time spent on them. They have more thought process behind them. They have like a more deeper meaning behind them. So I'm not just like bashing out quick pieces now because I can, because if I wanted to, I could spend like 30 minutes and make a decent animated piece to go out. Whereas now I want to spend more time making these really complex pieces that have more skills involved and more time involved. And if that takes a couple of days or even a couple of weeks, that's fine. I think people now appreciate that when you put it out there and they can see like the the time and effort put into these pieces. So yeah, I'll take a breath now.
No,
And
no.
that's what I'm trying to do. Like I'm trying to
Yeah.
spend more time with family and spend more time making really personal pieces that mean something, and those pieces can draw in new projects and new work. So and inspire people. That's always amazing. Like, you know,
Yeah.
inspire people to do stuff and to make motion type or make animated pieces. Like that's great as well.
Yeah. Just having a connection with people just through your work is
Yeah,
always incredible.
that's
Incredible. Yeah, and it really resonates what you said, you know, in terms of just like wanting to spend more time with family and be around them. And yeah, I mean, yeah, since having my little one, Sahara, she you know, spending as much time in the evenings with my wife. I'm no longer like creating or thinking or, you know, just on my computer as much as like you said you were. And yeah, it gets older, it gets better when they get older. You know, they're like my little one's she's in nursery, she's 2.5 now. So, you know, been able to just get back to doing some things here and there for myself. But, you know, it still has changed the way that I kind of work essentially because I
yeah, of
do still
course.
spend that time with family. Yeah, it's really, really,
Yeah,
really good. It's really important. Oh,
yeah.
that's great.
Nice. That's amazing.
I'm conscious of the time and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I've got
That's all right.
some quick rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Yeah. Go for it.
Um,
Go for it.
what hobbies outside of like the creative industry do you have? What is it you get up to? And you're not with Freddie, you're not
Yeah.
with the tools.
So they're more active based. So I have a dog, and he's quite a big dog. He's like a Vizsla Doberman cross from he's a rescue from Greece, and he requires a good walk a day. So we're talking like an hour or an hour and a half. So I have that. That is, well, it's kind of like a chore. It's also a hobby because I get to go out on a walk into the countryside essentially because I live outside of Leeds, like in a place called Horsforth, and there's fields and trees and greenery, and I go out with the dog and just step away from the computer. And if I'm having like a tough day on a project and I want to just sign off for an hour and a bit, that's what I do, and it's a good way to de-stress and a good way to just sort of not think about things. And at the same time, it also helps solve problems because if I'm thinking about a job but it's not going badly, but I need some new ideas, then sometimes when I'm out walking the dog, I'll make notes on my phone and list out how I could possibly tackle something or like certain ideas that might work. So that's a big thing, and it's good. Like to get my exercise is
Yeah,
key. I think really
definitely.
key.
Sure. Top 5 Spotify artists where you listen to your work.
My last year, my Wrapped was Anderson .Paak,
Nice.
Loyal Kana,
Okay.
Ezra Collective, who are essentially they're like a jazz kind of fusion folk band,
Yeah.
which are amazing. There was probably a lot of the Black Keys in there. I like their kind of rhythm and their sort of jive, and a bit of a guilty pleasure. There was some Hans Zimmer in there, who is
Nice.
the composer of Inception,
Yeah.
Interstellar, The Dark Knight. Um, I'm big into like movie soundtracks and movie themes, and that kind of sort of really creatively gets me so going sometimes. So I've got like a work playlist which has got like Anderson .Paak in and hundreds of songs, but then I've also got like a movie soundtrack playlist which is incredibly geeky, but it really helps and gets me into that process and gets me into that mindset of like creating. So Hans Zimmer's in there as well. He took a lot of time up last year. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. Good
Yep.
arts to have for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
What are you watching at the moment? Any cool series? Any good movies that you recommend?
I still need to get into The Bear season 3.
Okay.
I rinsed the first 2 seasons. Like I loved the first 2 seasons, but the third season, I think probably because it's come in between when Freddie was quite young, my child. So I've not had the my sort of drive to watch series has dropped so much, like in the last
Yeah.
like 10 months. But yeah, I've got that to watch. I need to keep watching What If. That also has a third season, which has dropped off my radar from Marvel. So those two, and I'm a massive It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan.
Nice.
I've probably watched it, the 15 season, I've probably watched them 10 or 11 times through. I know every episode back to front, so I love that show. And if you like crazy people with really random antics, just shouting at each other all the time, which sounds really intense. But it's got some great characters. Watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Final question. If you
Great.
weren't in the creative field now, what do you think you'd be doing?
I like to think I would have gone down the sports route. I was quite an athletic child. I tried lots of different sports like gymnastics, trampolining, which fed into my original dream job, which was being a stuntman. I
Oh, yeah.
dreamed, I grew up watching Jackie Chan, and I watched every Jackie Chan film back to front. And I dreamed of being a stuntman, and almost when I left university and was struggling to think of even doing about design, was looking into like stuntman courses and how people got into being a stuntman. So I had gymnastics training when I was a kid. I'd done trampolining for years. I was a
Yeah.
very much like rough and tumble kid, jumping out of trees,
Yeah.
play fighting,
Brilliant.
So I would love to think if I didn't and hadn't have stuck to design, I would have gone into some sort of stuntman
Yeah,
job in one form or another, because I love that adrenaline side. But
for sure.
here I am just making type move instead of
No, it's all
doing
good.
stunts.
Yeah, it's all good.
I even looked at like how, I looked at tumbling, like how to get into
Mm,
tumbling.
yeah,
I was looking into everything. I even had like weird ideas of like buying a GoPro and then going and like climbing like trees in like this forest near my house and just like filming myself like jumping from tree to tree to try and just anything to get into that
yeah.
world. I just dove into the computer instead, and
So,
I could sometimes do things like I really wish I'd done something more active, because
yeah,
I miss that active side. But yeah, that is weird. That's such a weird
that is a
coincidence.
really weird one, for
Man,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, cool. Oh
there you
well,
go.
thank you so much for your time, man. Like, it's been amazing to talk to you and
Anytime.
connect more. Yeah, definitely. Oh, brilliant. Final question. If you
Great.
weren't in the creative field now, what do you think you'd be doing?
I like to think I would have gone down the sports route. I was quite an athletic child. I tried lots of different sports like gymnastics, trampolining, which fed into my original dream job, which was being a stuntman. I
Oh, yeah.
dreamed, I grew up watching Jackie Chan, and I watched every Jackie Chan film back to front. And I dreamed of being a stuntman, and almost when I left university and was struggling to think of even doing about design, was looking into like stuntman courses and how people got into being a stuntman. So I had gymnastics training when I was a kid. I'd done trampolining for years. I was a very
Yeah,
much like rough and tumble kid, jumping out of
yeah.
trees, play fighting,
Brilliant.
So I would love to think if I didn't and hadn't have stuck to design, I would have gone into some sort of stuntman
Yeah,
job in one form or another, because I love that adrenaline side. But
for sure.
here I am just making type move instead of
No, it's all
doing
good.
stunts.
Yeah, it's all good.
I even looked at like how, I looked at tumbling, like how to get into
Mm,
tumbling.
yeah,
I was looking into everything. I even had like weird ideas of like buying a GoPro and then going and like climbing like trees in like this forest near my house and just like filming myself like jumping from tree to tree to try and just anything to get into that
yeah.
world. I just dove into the computer instead, and
So,
I could sometimes do things like I really wish I'd done something more active, because
yeah,
I miss that active side. But yeah, that is weird. That's such a weird
that is a
coincidence.
really weird one, for
Man,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, cool. Oh
there you
well,
go.
thank you so much for your time, man. Like, it's been amazing to talk to you and
Anytime.
connect more. Yeah, definitely.